Good morning and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Taranto. Today, we are thrilled to have Nick Marlin from the Andrew Marquis team at Cross Country Mortgage joining us for a conversation about rent versus buying. And I think with increasing interest rates and a dearth of inventory, some people have turned back to renting. So we want to run a scenario together and talk about the differences in paying rent versus paying a mortgage.
Yeah.
So, Nick, why don't you kick us off?
Awesome. Well, thank you both for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. So basically what I did was I ran a scenario verse on a $500,000 purchase, 10% down. So the mortgage would be $450,000. The total monthly payment I had there, including taxes, insurance, making some assumptions, was right around $3,600 a month.
Okay.
Now, a lot of time, first-time home buyers, when they're looking at rent versus buying, they're looking purely at the month-to-month cost, which obviously when rates were much lower was a good barometer of, I can purchase for, I'm renting for 3,000, I can buy for 2,700. That's an easy deal.
Right.
Obviously in today's day and age, that's not necessarily the case, but I just wanted to run a quick scenario here that will give you the overall benefits to kind of show you that maybe on a month-to-month, it might not be a less expensive option, but when you take it over year, it would definitely be, a more cost-effective and long-term wealth building opportunity. So if your rent is $3,000 a month, at the end of the year, basically, you're going to pay $36,000 for the year, and that's it. That's your total, that's your monthly expenses, annual expenses. That's it. There's no benefit or anything.
The
On a
benefit
mortgage,
is just having a place to live, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you're correct. Now, and there are some obvious benefits in terms of, you have some flexibility. If you're looking to be here short term, you're not sure where you want to be. There are some definite benefits to renting. But in terms of the investment side, on the, it can be less beneficial than I think people think, especially if you're looking only purely monthly. So let's take that $3,600 a month monthly payment for a mortgage, again, including taxes, insurance, everything. On an annual basis, that's $43,200. Now, that first year, your principal pay down will be somewhere in the neighborhood of just under $4,600 a month. So already you're approaching that $36,000 a month or $36,000 annual payoff for the rent. In addition, you're going to pay about $30,000 in tax, non-taxes, in interest that first year. And when you take that tax deduction, that's going to be about another $9,000 or so in a tax return.
That's so substantial.
And it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Now, obviously, if you're thinking month to month and bills are important, it's not necessarily a make or break number, but it's something that I do think is important to consider. In addition, I think, I'm sure you guys can comment better than I can, but conservative appreciation in this market, maybe 3%.
Yeah.
So give or take. So that's another $15,000 in appreciation on the back end. So all of a sudden, that $43,000 a year in total payments for the mortgage comes down to $29,000 in payment, just when you take in the principal pay down and the tax return. When you factor in the appreciation on top of that, that 29,000 becomes 14,000, and all of a sudden, 36,000 to 14,000, you're over $20,000 to the good by making a purchase with a higher monthly payment than you would be in just paying rent for that $3,000 a month.
That is so incredible. I mean, so when people are looking at these numbers with you, Nick, are you able to just break this scenario down for each person? Like, so if somebody comes to you to get pre-approved, they have concern about month-to-month expense. Like, talk to us a little bit about, do you do this math for them on the front side so that they can understand better?
We do. I think we really emphasize more the principal pay down and, the mortgage itself. We're obviously not tax professionals, so we'll give broad strokes, but we'll also kind of, say, hey, long-term, talk to an accountant to really give you the full benefit of that. But it's just something that I think a lot of people don't consider. what we look at too when we're talking on the front end, more on the affordability side, is I really like to have two conversations, which is what's the most that we can qualify you for, and where do you really feel comfortable? Because those can sometimes be two different numbers.
I think
And
they're
a lot
all
of
two different numbers.
they should always be two very different numbers, but a lot of times they're not, unfortunately. So that's something else where I can say, look, I know you're nervous about this number, but technically you are eligible to go double, sometimes double and a half on what you're actually buying, just to give them the comfort of that they are in a good position financially, and in a good position to buy and be good moving forward, even if things do change down the road.
Awesome.
Right.
That's super helpful. I think that's something that people should be mindful of because, interest rates have gone up, but rent has also gone up. So it's not like rent has stayed static. So now, rent, you might be maybe talking 3,000, but maybe rent's now 3,300. I was talking to my financial advisor the other day and he's like, I have a friend in the Seaport. His rent went from $6,700 a month to 8,000. And he was like, at that point, he was like, what's the point of renting? I got to move. I got to find something else. And so I think understanding the breakdown of the numbers is just super helpful. I think our audience who watches this will find this really helpful.
Yeah, because I mean, you're essentially paying yourself when you're paying for a mortgage. So you have that principal pay down, which is an asset in a different format, right? So it's not cash in the bank, it is equity in your house.
Exactly.
And when you have appreciation, the last couple of years, people have gotten a significant amount of appreciation. But if you go back and you could look at something like the Case-Shiller index and take a look at how housing prices have behaved over the last 50 years, even when the market is in a decline, it's generally not a precipitous change in value. So if you have 2 years at 3% appreciation and you've made it to 6% appreciation, and then the next year the market falls 5%, you're still up 1% from where you purchased, plus your pay down on your principal balance.
Exactly. I like to look at and communicate with our clients, the principal pay down for me is like a forced savings account. You take it away before you see it, but it's there.
Yeah.
And in terms of appreciation, absolutely. It's not anything that we always like to bank on, but in the long term, it's going to be there.
Right.
And the other thing that I talk to a lot of people about, and I'm sure you do as well, is that this Boston market is not the national market.
Right.
So where there are 20-30% swings in some markets up and down, we very rarely are going to see more than, a 5 to 7% decline in any given time frame.
Agreed. Yeah.
This is great, Nick. Thank you very much for coming today on Coffee with Tom and Joanne. And if anyone needs to reach you, what's the best way for them to reach you, Nick?
Cell phone number is 508-361-2459. And my email is nicholas@marquisccm.com.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you
for
so
joining us.
much.
Thank you both. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Cheers.